Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Billy Strange, and in this edition of Test Drive, we are checking out RaceRoom Racing Experience. This is a work in progress build that Sector 3 sent to us, so thanks to them for letting us check it out early. And it is of the 24-hour version of the Nordschleife, along with the Bentley Continental GT3. Let's see, we go through the 24-hour version right there. Currently using a Thrustmaster TX base with a 599 Evo rim and Ricmotech GT Pro 1 pedals. Did something a little different for this test drive. I decided to qualify with the AI at 100%, which ended up putting me on the pole. So the whole idea now is to stay out front. And while we're on the GP part of the course, I'm going to talk about the Bentley a little. Right out of the box, it's not a bad handling car, but it does feel a little stiff. It has a tendency to push in the center of the turn. For me, I just needed the car to feel like it was in the track a little bit more. Not that the side bite is communicated poorly. It actually, RaceRoom does a very good job of communicating side bite, in my opinion, with the on-screen visual cues and the force feedback. Real quick, I have set at 85% in the overall setting, and then now in this build each car has a force feedback multiplier. This one started out at 1.9. I turned it down to 1 because it felt a little heavy for me, and I was clipping. Let's see, we bypass the other chicane of the circuit, and real quick before we get back into the settings, you can turn right on the GP course while you're qualifying, so you make your outlap and then turn right right there, and you can start your qualifying run without going around the whole Nordschleife to make it. So that's pretty cool, and I was informed that is the current way that they do it in the real race. So again, just that little element of realism and immersion there makes a big difference. We're also racing at sunset. I just like the way that the whole atmosphere looked during sunset, and you know, I took a few frame rate hit putting it at sunset, but nothing terrible. It still ran as I expected it would. Getting back to the force feedback, it communicates very well. I've never raced, obviously, a Continental GT3, but I would assume the car seems like it would be on the heavy side. So I feel like it does communicate that. I compared it to the Z06, the C6R. It's not as snappy, it's not as peppy, and it's not as nimble. You know, without ever having raced either of those cars, you know, my perception is that that would be fairly accurate. I will never say if something is realistic because obviously I've never driven the cars, so I can't comment to that. But it does what I expect it to do. The changes I made to the car, let's see, the toe-in I took from 0.29 to 0.09 on the toe-in. So technically that's toe out. When it's in the negative number on here, that means it actually got toe out. The back of the tires, if you're sitting in the car, are facing inward. At the rear of the car, I went from positive 0.2 to 0.3, so towed in the rear just a hair. That means the front side of the tires are facing inward. As far as shocks are concerned, took my bump from 8 down to 7, which softened, that's compression, so the car dives a little quicker. In the rear, I did the same thing, so it squats a little quicker. And then on rebound, which is where it extends, kept it at 8 in the front, but went to 7 in the rear, so we could get a little bit more when we're on the brakes. It would unhook the back end just a little bit going into the turn, because I ended up needing more steering going into the turn with, you can see with these spring settings, I went from 1370 to 1142 in the front and 1028 to 914 in the rear. So that was just to soften up the car as much as I could. Camber in the front I felt was a little too much, so it had a -4 in the front, which to me I couldn't tell if I was riding on the inside of the tire still going through the turn, which means you don't have as much contact patch on the track in compression. So I just lessened it just a hair to 3.8. Car felt a little better, didn't push quite so bad. And then the rear, I went from 2.1 to 2.5 to stabilize the back end under load. Ride height, we went from front and rear 2.9 to 2.5. Tried to get the car as low as we can without bottoming out on the track. I felt, since there's no data, I felt like that would help, by feel, help get the car to calm down. Softened up the sway bars, 799 to 685 and 457 to 343 in the rear. Brake bias went from 57 to 62 in the front. Once again, I just prefer a little more front brake bias, and lessened the pressure to 93 from 95. And now that we're on a good part of the Nordschleife, here we come to the Carousel. And this Carousel is probably, out of any version that I've run, once again, I can't tell you how accurate it is. I've never run on the Nordschleife before, as far as in real life. But it felt good. Like, the car wasn't dancing around all over the place. I mean, it's not easy to keep in there, but the car doesn't do anything weird in that section, so I really like that. The Nordschleife itself in RaceRoom is comparable to any other version. In fact, one of the better versions of the Nordschleife that I've driven. I mean, the atmosphere around the track is great. It gives you that sense that something is going on. You're just not out in the stale environment. They really populate, I mean, look at that. They've really populated the outside lying areas of the track, which I really enjoy. I like that kind of feeling and immersion that can happen when those things are there, along with every once in a while you can even hear the music. You'll hear it more in the replay, but in the car, the music, if you're by yourself, every once in a while, depending on how high you've got the ambient noises, you can hear it just a little bit. And if you also notice, you can hear, like I was playing around with the sound settings. I kicked up the backfires just a little bit, because who doesn't like backfires? Well, for some people that may be annoying, but I like it. Fly through this section. This is always a tricky turn right here. Back off a little early. Still miss my apex a little bit, but not too bad. Couple things you've noticed, that down on the bottom right hand corner is part of their new HUD. So now you can see where if you've got damage to the car, the engine, tire wear, there's your fuel on the side. Also a couple things for push to pass if that car ends up having it. And now we're heading down the long straightaway. For balance of performance, they've implemented where the gear ratios cannot be changed in the GT3 cars, so that's interesting. And once again, as we've been running around the track, I'm sure you've seen my little deficiencies here and there. I don't have a ton of laps around the Nordschleife. In fact, being with ISR for a month, I probably turned more laps on the Nordschleife now than I have in the past 2 years. So there's definitely times when the AI cars were probably stacked up behind me. And here we come to the end of one lap around the 24-hour version. Track looks great. It runs great. Car's great. It's just different. AI seems to work well around the track. I don't know what else they're going to change and or improve, but this is a solid first impression for me. I really enjoyed it. I like the atmosphere around the Nordschleife part of the track. There's 3 other versions. You get the standard Nordschleife, you get the VLN version, and then they put a version in there through the Nordschleife. It's like one point to the other, so that's pretty interesting. So again, I'd like to thank Sector 3 for letting us check this out early. And also, as a reminder, this is a work in progress build, so this is not the final version of the product. And I picked this version of the car, real quick as a side note, I picked this version of the car just because I own a slot car store where we race 32nd scale slot cars, and I actually have this version of the car from Scale Electric. So I thought that was pretty cool that the version I had in the slot car was in RaceRoom. As always, thanks for making it this far in the video and watching. I'm going to sign off here. You can watch the full rest of the lap replay. Be sure to hit that like button if you did enjoy this episode and preview. Leave a comment below if you have a suggestion for our test drive series as far as track, car, and or sim. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care.